Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to round up all of the information from the press conferences today and also take a look at my team selection because I have some updates and it's not clickbait. I genuinely may be taking a -8 hit this week. If you do enjoy today's video and you get any use out of it, smash that like button. If you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, in today's video, I'm going to start by rounding up all of the information from today's press conferences, and we had a hell of a lot of important information around some very, very key players in our FPL teams. Once I've gone through all the press conference updates, I'm then going to very briefly look at Game Week 29, because a lot of people still asking questions about which teams are playing and which teams are blanking, so I want to give you all of the information we have on that, and then most importantly, I'll end with my current team selection and my current transfer plans going into the deadline, because I probably am taking a -4 hit now, and I actually might have convinced myself to take a -8 hit. So we'll discuss all of that at the end of the video. But firstly, Spurs update. So we actually got an update on Udogie and Pedro Porro. Both were not pictured in training on Thursday, and unfortunately both are going to be unavailable for Game Week 25. It's sad if you own them, but also sad for Spurs because I think that is a massive blow. On Destiny Udogie, Ange Postecoglou said, Destiny picked up a bit of a knock last week and is not available for tomorrow. I don't think it's anything too serious. He should be back, which is obviously for the next game against Palace on March the 2nd. So, pretty optimistic there on Destiny Udogie. He did also give a relatively positive update on Porro, but when I watched this, because you can actually watch it over on Spurs' Twitter, he just seemed a little bit more optimistic around Udogie. But on Pedro Porro, he said, Pedro picked up a strain in training, probably a couple of weeks for him. With the game break, again, there being no game next weekend, hopefully he doesn't miss too much. So again, he's still relatively positive on both, but I just got the vibe that he was slightly more positive on Udogie. And apparently Pedro Porro's is a muscular injury. I think it's a groin injury. So all in all, I would be pretty happy selling your Spurs assets this week. The great thing about Spurs, as we'll discuss when we move on to Game Week 29, is they've obviously got really good fixtures outside of their blank in 26, and they are confirmed to have a fixture against Fulham in Game Week 29. So I think that pretty much everyone, unless you are free hitting in 29, will probably be at some point around Game Week 27 or 28 on a triple Spurs, or at least trying to get towards triple Spurs. Does that mean that that has to involve Destiny Udogie or Pedro Porro? No. And does that mean that you can't sell them and buy them back? Again, no. I would be slightly more tempted to keep Udogie than Pedro Porro simply because he's cheaper than Pedro Porro, but also on top of that, his data's actually been slightly better than Porro's recently. There's just been a bit of a drop-off in Porro's attacking data, and therefore I don't even necessarily think he's the best asset to own from Spurs, or maybe even in the top 3. Because if Udogie's cheaper and he's doing well, you could go for him. But on top of that, Spurs aren't keeping many clean sheets. So it may well be that the optimal triple up to be going into Game Week 29 with, again, and this is assuming you're not free hitting, may well be Son, Maddison, and Richarlison, or at least 3 attackers from Spurs. And again, if you are free hitting in 29, maybe you don't even need 3 Spurs. Maybe you just go with something like a Richarlison and a Son, or a Maddison and a Son. So I am leaning towards saying, yes, I'd be very happy selling Pedro Porro, but I definitely wouldn't force it and rush it. The way that I would view this is, if you have another defender that can play this week, you weren't going to play Pedro Porro in 26 anyway, and maybe your plan wasn't to sell him. I feel like if your plan wasn't to sell him in 26, and you can get away with playing another defender this week, what is the rush in selling him now? Because you can get another fixture this week, you weren't going to have him next week anyway, then you can reassess going into Game Week 27 against Crystal Palace. So I've just given you 2 alternative point of views there, but basically I would be very happy selling him if it allows you to get an upgrade this week, and we'll discuss at the end, it may allow me to get the likes of De Bruyne into my team. If that's the case, it may well be worth doing so. And if maybe you've got no other issues in your team and you just want to get that transfer done, fine. But if you were planning on holding him through 26 anyway, and you don't need him this week, I just don't see the need to rush that transfer right now. So hopefully that does help you, but just to confirm, Udogie and Porro will not be available in 25, and they blank in 26, so I certainly don't think this is a terrible time to sell either of them. Next up, we had some updates from Klopp around Liverpool, and there are actually quite a few updates, so let me just read through them, and then I'll, of course, discuss the elephant in the room, which is Mohamed Salah being back and in contention. So, Mohamed Salah is back in full training, and Klopp's exact quote was, that brings him automatically into contention. We'll dissect that in a minute because I think there are multiple ways that you can look at that. But Salah is now definitely back in full team training because there were some doubts that he wasn't earlier in the week spotted in the heavy contact stuff like attack versus defense, and he was only pictured in some of the ball work. But now he's back in full team training. Konate is obviously not suspended anymore, and therefore he is available again for selection. Joe Gomez is fit again, so he can play left back, right back, or through the middle. Connor Bradley is definitely back in full team training after compassionate leave, and then Alisson Becker is also back as well. So lots of positives there for Liverpool. The only two negatives being that Dominic Szoboszlai is still out, and he's expected to return around the Carabao Cup final. And then Trent Alexander-Arnold is now confirmed as being back around 1 or 2 weeks after the final. So the key information, Salah is back and in contention, and probably the other piece of key information is that Trent is definitely out for Game Week 25, and probably even out for Game Week 27 as well. Considering he also blanks in 26, that makes Trent a 100% definite sell. Around Mohamed Salah, this is going to be very interesting because Liverpool are actually the early kickoff in Game Week 25. And you guys will know now, if you've been tuning into my deadline streams for a while, that we do get early team news quite a lot. And I would feel relatively confident that we will get team news whether Salah starts for Liverpool in Game Week 25, or at least in the first fixture of Game Week 25 against Brentford. Hypothetically, if Salah is leaked to start, that becomes tricky because you know you get a start against Brentford and then you know you almost definitely get some minutes against Luton. I would be extremely surprised. I think most people hold this perspective coming off the back of what has been a pretty serious injury for him and a muscular injury at that. I would be very surprised if he goes from getting no minutes to 2 starts. I mean, that would just be shocking to me. Unless in the first game he only plays one half. But I would predict Mohamed Salah's minutes to be something like 20 to 30 minutes against Brentford, and then maybe 60 minutes against Luton. So I'm probably predicting Salah to get around 80, 90 minutes. So I would treat this for Salah as roughly, and this is just my prediction, one single game. So he's almost got a single game, which is a combination of minutes against Brentford and Luton. Would I be surprised to see Salah start against Brentford and get limited minutes and then benched against Luton ahead of the cup final? Minutes-wise, that may make a little bit more sense. And then also, would I be surprised if he gets absolutely no minutes against Brentford, maybe isn't even in the squad, and then gets a sub-appearance against Luton, ready for the cup final? Again, I wouldn't be surprised. So to put all that together, I think Salah's minutes will be somewhere, and this is very vague, between 30 and 90. Could be pushing 100 minutes. Therefore, I just don't think I can bring him in, because it's not just about obviously his lack of minutes. There are multiple things to consider. He's incredibly expensive and requires a lot of surgery. And if you don't own De Bruyne, you're telling me that you would rather Salah for maybe less than 90 minutes versus De Bruyne for what we think will probably be 2 starts and then a fixture in 26. And that's the other thing with Salah. It's not only the surgery and hits required to bring him in this week for probably limited minutes. He doesn't play in 26. He then plays against Man City in 28, and he'll almost definitely blank in 29. So I just don't think I can have Salah. And as someone that's not free hitting in 29, I think I've basically committed to having no Salah until Game Week 30. And I think I will stick to that regardless of if he comes back and scores 10 goals against Brentford. I just don't think I can do it for my team. So sadly, I think I've committed. I would say the only time that I'd be happy to bring Salah in, or I would recommend it to you, is if you've got loads of money sat there, you already own Haaland and De Bruyne, and there aren't any other players you want to get. But for most people, if you've got like Haaland and De Bruyne, you might not have a Foden. And if you've got a phone, you might have a Saka. And I'm just like, I would prefer all of these other players, given the blank in 26 and given the lack of clarity we have around his minutes. But let's see what happens on the deadline stream. Make sure to tune into that on Saturday morning. It'll be very, very interesting. The other thing to note is obviously around Trent. There are various ways that you can replace Trent, right? There are various players that you can move to. You can just attack the double this week and go for Van Dijk, Bradley if you think he'll start both, Konate if you think he'll start both, Robertson could be a decent shout, but again, with Joe Gomez being back, he can play centre-back, he can play right-back, he can play left-back. You've got Quansah, I think that's how you pronounce it, who's the other centre-back that Liverpool can play, so I just don't know who's going to get minutes, really, outside of probably Van Dijk if you want 2 starts. So that's one way you could go. You could go for a Man City defender like Ake or Diaz, and we'll discuss Man City in a second because they've got obviously 2 fixtures in 25 and they play in Game Week 26 as well. But there's always worries around the Man City defenders and who's actually going to play. Outside of that, you can just bring in a player that has good fixtures over the next couple of weeks, serves you well in blank Game Week 26, and maybe decent fixtures beyond that. I've been looking at Dalot or Maguire myself because they have Luton and then Fulham in the next 2. You could go for someone like a Van Heck, who has 2 really nice fixtures coming up as well. So there are multiple ways that you can do it. It really depends on your own team and your own strategy. But I am leaning towards saying just be aggressive with it. If your team isn't a mess for 26, bring in Van Dijk. If your team is a bit of a mess for 26, maybe go for an Nathan Ake. I'm starting to lean towards just saying try and get the extra fixtures because they have the highest upside, I would say. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know down below if you are considering bringing in Salah. And if he is leaked to start on Saturday, there will be a bit of panic last minute. So guys, I told you we got a lot of updates. We also got a lot of updates around Manchester City, so I'll rattle them off because not all of them are relevant directly to FPL, but Jack Grealish will not be available for Game Week 25, so if you're looking to get him, maybe not. It does obviously make Doku more likely to get more minutes, but as we've seen, Foden can play on the left, so I would probably avoid Doku anyway, but if you were looking at him and you really want to go for it, this obviously makes it slightly better as a pick. Bernardo Silva will unfortunately be assessed in today's training session, which takes place directly after Pep's press conference. So we don't get a definitive update around Bernardo Silva, but we may get leaks tonight as to whether he trained. And obviously, I think if he trained and you own him, you probably keep him. But I certainly wouldn't be looking to buy him at the moment because even if he did train, if he's coming off of I think it was like an ankle knock, and I think Pep said it was quite nasty, the knock. I'm not sure that he plays both, even if he does train. And I think even if he was fully fit, he wouldn't be confirmed to start both anyway. So I feel like don't buy Bernardo Silva, but as long as he trained, I probably wouldn't sell him. The only time I'd be looking to sell Bernardo Silva is if you don't own Foden or De Bruyne and you can move to them in one move, because I kind of feel like that is a really nice upgrade for your team. Kovacic is back in training as well, which doesn't really directly impact FPL, and obviously Sergio Gomez back in training, which once again probably doesn't impact FPL. I know he can play left back, but I just don't think he's going to get significant minutes in the immediate future. I'd say along with the Bernardo Silva update, the other key piece of information we had for FPL is that Josko Gvardiol has ankle ligament damage. Now, if you own Gvardiol, it means that he's now a sell because the predicted return date is the end of February or beginning of March. So if you own him, he's definitely a sell. And if, like me, you are tempted by Nathan Ake, it does certainly make his minutes stronger. Does it mean he'll start every game? No. And I want to confirm this because people don't seem to realise. We have seen on multiple occasions, at least 4 occasions this season, one of Rico Lewis or Akanji start at left back on paper and then invert into midfield. I would say that when they do that, it makes most sense to have Ake at left centre-back, right? Because he's then playing almost in a back three, and he's the most comfortable left-footed centre-back that they have. The only other person that can really play there is if Akanji doesn't come into midfield, he could play there, or Ruben Dias. But would you be surprised to see a back four, or a back three, let's say, in this occasion, of Dias, Stones and Walker with Akanji inverting into midfield? Absolutely not. You could most definitely see that. Or Rico Lewis inverting into midfield and then someone like Akanji into centre-back rather than Walker. There are multiple combinations that Man City can go for, and I think that's kind of the reason that I'm still not completely committed to bringing in a Man City defender, because whilst Ake's minutes look better now without Gvardiol, there are at least 3 or 4 combinations that they could play where Ake is on the bench. And he has played a hell of a lot of minutes recently. You could look at that 2 ways. You could say he is so important to Pep's team, he'll continue to play every minute. But we said that about Walker, and then Walker was rotated. We said it earlier in the season about Akanji, and Akanji was rotated. So I'm just not sure that we will ever have a fully nailed Man City defender. But if you are to go for one at the moment, I would definitely go for Ake. I think he's above Walker. I think he's above anyone else in that City defence. So I like Ake as a transfer, but do not kid yourself into thinking that he is definitely going to start the next 3 games. So guys, just to finish off the press conference section of this video, there are a few other updates that obviously weren't included in those 3 main teams there. So the first being that Hwang Hee-chan has been spotted in full team training and will be ready for Game Week 25. My prediction is that Hwang Hee-chan will start this game week. So I think if you have him and you want to start him, I think that's fine. If you're looking to pick him up, maybe you want to wait another week until the Sheffield United fixture in 26, but I still feel like you could probably get away with it this week. But that's only my prediction. But Gary O'Neill has said that he is available for Game Week 25. Sadly for Wolves and for a lot of Cunha owners, Cunha is definitely going to be out for a while now, and he's got some muscle damage. He's had a scan, and yeah, it's going to be at least weeks, potentially even months until Cunha's back. So if you own Cunha, he's definitely a sell. On Chelsea, they've actually had a few decent updates, but one negative one. So Sanchez is now back for them, but I don't think Pochettino commented on whether he will start this week in goal. Colwill and Gusto are available, so if you've got them and you want to play them this week, you could absolutely do so, although I can't imagine you'd particularly want to given the fixture. And then they, of course, blank in 26, and Thiago Silva is out as well. Due to the fact that they've got City this week and they blank next week, I'd be willing to sell them regardless, but if you are down to your bare bones, Colwill and Gusto are going to be available. On West Ham, Paqueta is still out, and it does make the likes of Kudus and Bowen weaker options, but apparently he's close now. He's back out on the grass, so as soon as Paqueta's back, the likes of Kudus and Bowen, in my opinion, do become better options. Antonio is back in the squad as well, the long-forgotten Antonio. As soon as he's back, we might see Bowen a little bit wider once again, or maybe drop a little bit deeper. And then lastly, Zuma is fit, so once again, if you are down to your bare bones and you've held Zuma throughout, he is now available. On Aston Villa, we've had an update around Kamara, definitely confirmed out for the season with an ACL injury. He'll be going for surgery very, very soon. I think his predicted return date September, October. Diego Carlos is out for 3 to 4 weeks, and I would predict it could even maybe be a little bit longer than that because it's a hamstring injury. So we're not expecting Diego Carlos back anytime soon. Konsa has been a little bit under the radar, but from my own personal understanding, Konsa's injury is not expected to be serious, i.e. being he's not done his ACL as far as I'm aware. However, he has done the ligaments in his knee. It looks like a sprain at the moment. The scans seem to have come back all clear, but we haven't had a definitive update from Aston Villa. These are just things that I've heard. So my prediction is that Konsa's probably going to be out for around the same period of time as Diego Carlos, and therefore I can't confirm to you that he's not going to be back in 26, but I would be extremely surprised if he plays in 25 or 26. When we're looking at game week 29, if you want to somehow hold him through until 29, there is a chance he's back for 29, and I kind of hope over the coming weeks that Emery will give us a more definitive update. Or we'll see him back in training, in which case it becomes a lot easier. So for Aston Villa, the back four kind of has to be one of Luca Dean or Moreno at left back, Pau Torres and Longley at centre back with Matty Cash right back. The only other variations we could see is maybe Luca Dean in centre back, which would be pretty horrific, so I don't think that will happen. Maybe we could see one of Dean or Moreno at right back if he really doesn't want to play with Cash. I can't see that happening. The only other final one is Callum Chambers has been in full team training. He's not played in the Premier League this season, but he is right-footed. So there could be a situation where they play one of Longley or Pau Torres at left centre-back and then Callum Chambers at right centre-back, in which case maybe Pau Torres doesn't play again. But I would just predict he's been in full team training for 2 weeks now. I own Pau Torres. I might need him for this week. I would expect him to start. So hopefully that's clear. If there were any things you weren't clear on during the press conference updates, let me know down below and I'll try my best to clear it up. So guys, I wanted to very briefly talk about Game Week 29 because I've mentioned it in various videos in parts, but I don't think I've ever talked about it in its entirety and told you about the percentage chance of certain teams playing, when we'll find out that information, etc. So this very short section, I'll try to keep it short, will hopefully give you all of the information you need around blank Game Week 29 and will allow you to come to your own decision about, is it a week where you want a free hit? Is it a week where you can build to that team with transfers? And it might also help you decide around things such as transfers this week and also your wild card as well. So for Game Week 29, we currently have 3 fixtures definitely happening. That is West Ham versus Aston Villa, Fulham versus Tottenham, and Burnley versus Brentford. And I should say all of this information, the graphic, is courtesy of Ben Crellin over on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. So those 3 fixtures definitely happening. The rest of the fixtures, we're not entirely sure. We will have probably almost definitely at least one more. And as you can see by Ben's chart, we are projected to get 5.27 fixtures. So we may yet get 4 more teams playing. Now, who plays and who blanks is basically dependent upon which teams reach the quarterfinal of the FA Cup. The 5th round of the FA Cup, which is before the quarterfinal, is played between Game Week 26 and Game Week 27. So before the Game Week 27 deadline, we will find out definitively which teams are playing in 27 and which teams are blanking in 27. So we are going to get that information, but sadly not before blank Game Week 26. So regarding which teams are most likely to blank, you can see by the blank percentage that Brighton and Manchester City are 93% likely to blank. If Brighton beat Wolves in the 5th round, or if Man City beat Luton, both are probably quite likely, then Brighton versus Man City will not go ahead. So I think we can pretty much confirm that unless there are 2 big upsets there, Brighton and Man City will not be playing in Game Week 29. The other fixture that is very likely to again not be going ahead is Everton versus Liverpool. Basically, Liverpool just need to beat Southampton. However, could you see a world in which Liverpool put out a weaker side and Southampton win? Of course you could. So we can't confirm that, but Everton, Liverpool also very unlikely to go ahead. Wolves and Bournemouth, I disagree with the odds percentage here. I think there's a chance this happens, but they need 2 fixtures to go a certain way in order for Wolves and Bournemouth to actually play in Game Week 29. So if Wolves beat Brighton, or if Bournemouth beat Leicester, this will not be a fixture in Game Week 29. So you can imagine that basically you need both of them to go in the alternative direction. So if Brighton beat Wolves and if Leicester beat Bournemouth, then actually Wolves versus Bournemouth could go ahead. So I'll let you decide that. But I think there is a world in which Leicester beat Bournemouth and in which Brighton beat Wolves. I think that could potentially happen. You would probably expect it to not be that case. Therefore, Wolves and Bournemouth are also predicted to be a blank. The other fixtures are, we've got Arsenal versus Chelsea. Again, I think this is possible, but if Chelsea beat Leeds, then Arsenal and Chelsea will blank in Game Week 29. But if Leeds beat Chelsea in the 5th round, and Leeds have been playing pretty well recently, and Chelsea haven't, if Leeds beat Chelsea, both Arsenal and Chelsea will play in blank Game Week 29. So there is a possibility that maybe you want to hold on to your Chelsea and Arsenal assets, because if they do play, you could end up with like 4 extra players in blank game week 29. We've also got Crystal Palace versus Newcastle, so this is likely to be a blank because if Newcastle beat Blackburn, then that will be a blank. But again, could Blackburn beat Newcastle? They could, in which case Newcastle and Palace would go ahead. So you can see, if there are some upsets, we could come away with having like 6 or 7 fixtures potentially. The one that is most interesting, however, is Manchester United versus Sheffield United and Luton versus Nottingham Forest. If we assume that Manchester City beat Luton, which I think most of us can, let's say that Man City beat Luton in the 5th round of the FA Cup. Basically, whoever loses out of the Manchester United versus Nottingham Forest fixture, so whoever loses that game will play in game week 29. So if Manchester United lose to Nottingham Forest, Manchester United versus Sheffield United will be a fixture. You'd probably want double or triple Man United there. If Forest lose to Manchester United, then Luton versus Nottingham Forest becomes a fixture, and the likes of Doughty, Kaminsky and Adebayo become much better options. Hopefully I've cleared that all up for you about what the different permutations are. And again, we find this out before the game week 27 deadline. The prediction at the moment is that we have the 3 fixtures that are already confirmed, plus probably Luton versus Nottingham Forest, assuming that Man United beat Forest, of course, and then maybe one other fixture if there is a cup upset. I think that would be fairly reasonable, but for the time being, these 6 teams that if you want to target players that play in 29 are West Ham, Villa, Fulham, Tottenham, Burnley, Brentford, and then maybe you can start thinking about Luton, Forest, Man United, Sheffield United, if you think you can predict which way that fixture goes. And then also, like I said, I've got a feeling Leeds could give Chelsea a game, so maybe be tempted to hold on to your Arsenal and Chelsea assets as well. If you do need anything cleared up around blank game week 29, please let me know down below in the comments. So guys, in this final section, I thought I would talk you through my team and my updated transfer plans, because as I said, I'm kind of tempted / almost confirmed in my mind. I think I'm going to take a -4 hit and try to attack the doubles a little bit more. But also I don't have to. I could just use 1 free transfer. And then I have actually looked at 2 different -8s, which if I was pushed at the moment, if the deadline was now, I'd be taking a -8 hit. So we're going to discuss that. This is the way my team currently looks. Things I can confirm to you. Can I confirm? Yes, I can confirm to you pretty much that most of my attackers will probably say the same that you can see in the starting 11. I will be triple captaining Haaland, and I'll be keeping Gabriel in the team. The stuff that I can't confirm to you is around my defence, how many of my defence I remove, and whether I also potentially make a goalkeeper transfer or look to bring in De Bruyne. So looking at my team, I've got 1 free transfer and 0.1 million in the bank. The most obvious thing to do with this team as you look at it is to bring in someone for Trent. So let's say I just do, I don't know, Van Dijk in for Trent, or Ake in for Trent, or a Man United defender in for Trent. It doesn't really matter, but someone in for Trent, and then just play Pau Torres because he's likely to start, and then just rock with that 11. So if you cover up Trent and just imagine he's a much better player for this week, it's fine. I don't need to take a hit this week. I really don't. Goalkeeper decision, by the way, very difficult. Let me know down below, Dubravka, Areola. I've got no idea. But so I can just, with 1 free transfer, remove Trent. I do not need to take a hit. And if I bring in someone that plays in 26, like Ake or like Dalot or Maguire, then it does make my life easier for 26 as well. However, I've started to think, is it worth also bringing in a goalkeeper potentially? Let's say replacing Dubravka or Areola with Alisson. Probably Dubravka, given that Areola plays in game week 29. So Dubravka to Alisson for -4, it's pretty much only for this week. So do I think Alisson for a -4 will outscore Dubravka? Will Dubravka +4 get more points than Alisson? I actually don't know. I kind of fancy Alisson there. So I'm thinking, do I just go risky? Do I just go for the big possible points haul of bringing in Alisson? I'm also thinking, let's go back and put Porro back in the 11. If I've got Porro and Trent here, who are both very, very expensive, I could potentially sell them both, and that may open up the funds for me, depending who I bring in for them, to get De Bruyne into my team. So these are all the things I'm thinking about. So now if I just move over to, is this the graphic? Yes, this is the graphic. I'm going to drag this over here. This is more like a live stream, this section. So here are the possible transfer plans that I have based on the team that you've just seen. You might have to go back and look at the team in a second, but based on the team that you've just seen, these are the possible transfer plans. I've tried to simplify it just so that you're aware, but when I say Ake, that could also be Dalot or Maguire. I've not really decided whether I prefer a Man United defender or a Man City defender, but let's say, for simplicity, the most obvious transfer that I can make here is Trent to Ake. Nice and simple, bring in a doubler, he plays in 26, and I've got enough players this week to field 11. Really, really nice. But I'm leaning towards getting a little bit more aggressive with it. The second possible transfer option is Trent and Dubravka to Ake and Alisson. That gives me 3 City, 3 Liverpool. And Alisson does not create an issue for me in game week 26 because I can play Areola. So I would say the option 2 is currently up there as my favourite -4 hit at the moment because it gives me less issues next week. However, if I actually just sell Trent and Porro, which is option 3 now, to Ake and Van Dijk, this also doesn't create a headache for me in 26 because Trent and Porro weren't playing in 26 anyway. So yes, I'm bringing in Van Dijk, but I'm bringing in Van Dijk for basically Porro, and Porro wasn't going to play for me anyway. So it is an extra -4 hit, yes, but it's not necessarily making my team any worse for 26. It's just not making it any better. So I actually don't mind that transfer because, again, I don't think I'm putting myself behind for the blank game week next week. So I also do like option 3. So those are the two -4 options. Now we move into the Big Daddy options, which is, can I get De Bruyne into my team due to the news that we now have around Trent and Porro? So option 4 is the first possible way to get De Bruyne in, and this is currently my favourite option, is Trent, Porro and Palmer. None of those 3 play in 26, by the way, and Palmer and Trent are very unlikely to play in 29. So Trent, Porro, Palmer to Doughty, Bradley and De Bruyne. Now, a couple of things here that I like about this. I would bring Doughty in without a doubt, undoubtedly without a doubt bringing Doughty in game week 28 regardless, because of that really nice double that they have and due to the upside that he has. So if I'm going to make a transfer to bring in Doughty in 28 anyway, and it's probably for a hit, by the way, when I've looked ahead, why not just take the hit this week, right? No, it's not a great double this week. Yes, he blanks in 26, but I'm taking out 3 blankers anyway. So again, it's not making my team any weaker for 26. So why not just bring in Doughty now as part of this transfer? I'm going to have to take a hit in the future anyway. Bring him in now. He could get something in this double, or he could not. But it's almost just moving a hit forward. I'm going to take that hit regardless. The other thing that I like is I think Bradley has some really high upside this week. Do I think he'll start both? No. No, I don't. But could I be wrong? Absolutely. And I often am wrong. And I'm thinking Bradley's going to probably get between 90 and 180 minutes. If on the off chance I am wrong and he gets 180, he could have some really high upside this week because when he's played, his data and attacking threat has been absolutely excellent. So I do actually quite like the idea of Bradley for this week. And again, yes, he blanks in 26 and then he's a bit of a dead spot, but the players that I'm taking out blank in 26, so it's not making me any weaker. And what that then does, bringing in Doughty and Bradley for Trent and Porro, is it opens up the funds to do Palmer to De Bruyne. Palmer plays City this week. Palmer then blanks in 26 anyway. And after that, he's probably likely to blank in 29. And De Bruyne is De Bruyne. My issue with this set of transfers is that it gives me a real benching headache. I don't know if this screen's still going to be up, is it? Yes, it is. So this is my team. If I do Palmer to De Bruyne, I've got to bench Richarlison or Watkins. I'm not benching Saka, and I'm not benching any of my doublers. So it is Richarlison or Watkins that I have to bench. So I'm taking a -8 to bench a very good asset. This is the only thing that I'm slightly concerned at with the -8 and why I'm just thinking, is it just the -4 that makes most sense? So that's the only concern. I'll just give you option 5 as well, which is another way that I could potentially bring in KDB, which I've spelt Bradley wrong as well, Bradley. Option 5 is another way to bring KDB in, but for Richarlison rather than Palmer. A couple of things I like about this. So it would be Trent, Porro, Richarlison to Saliba, Bradley, and then KDB. The reason that I really like this is it allows me to obviously keep Palmer, who I've got a little bit of money tied up in. It reduces the benching headache because I would just still bench Palmer this week and I'd be selling Richarlison. I don't think that's any better for me because I'm selling Richarlison rather than benching him, but I suppose it does reduce the psychological friction of a benching headache. And it also allows me to get Saliba instead of Doughty. And I just do think with the fixtures coming up, especially this week, but also he's got Sheffield United and Brentford coming up, Saliba is a really nice option to go double Arsenal defence. So there is a lot I like about this, but obviously the negative is I'm selling Richarlison, who I'm probably going to want back in very, very soon. So I do feel like this is getting me one transfer further away from where I want to be. So those are the 5 options. I would love your help this week if you're still watching this at this point. By the way, if you're still watching, make sure to like and subscribe. Trent, Porro, Richarlison, Saliba, Bradley, KDB. Do you like option 5 or do you like option 4 more? Basically, comment down below. Of the 5 options, you can just send a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I promise you, this isn't clickbait. I will decide this on the deadline stream because I've got no idea, right? I have no idea what I want to do. I think I'm leaning towards at least a -4. My least favourite of the options right now is actually 1. I think it's very passive. I like Ake. Ake could still come in. But I just think I kind of fancy bringing Alisson or Van Dijk for an extra -4 if I'm going to sell Trent anyway. So I would say my favourite options at the moment are probably just about 2 ahead of 3, although I do like the option of Van Dijk. And if I'm going to go for 4 or 5, I'm probably leaning 4 at the moment. But 5 kind of helps me this week with the benching headache and also allows me to get Saliba. So I'll leave it there. Comment down below 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tune into tomorrow's deadline stream as well, Saturday morning, as always, where I'll be streaming, making my decisions, and hopefully we'll get some early Liverpool team news as well. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 25 deadline decisions video where we've looked at the press conference updates and also my latest plans for my own team as well. If you did get any use out of today's video, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. And tune into tomorrow's deadline stream where we'll be going through all of the latest news, answering your questions and finalising my transfers as well. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.